Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero at the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us. Special guests every time here to discuss. Bring your passion, come along for the ride, and don't forget to subscribe, cause...
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie Hotspurs Live, where tonight we've got to dissect another loss as we lost 2-1 to Leicester at the weekend. I feel like we're going to go down the path of everything else but the football on this show tonight, but it's going to be good therapy nevertheless. And with me to do so, I am joined by two fabulous guests. George, it's amazing to have you back on the show. Obviously, not so good about the circumstances, but how are you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm all good, as good as can be, So yeah, just happy to be on. Hopefully we can dissect a little bit about what's happened and sort of what's wrong. Actually, we'd probably be quicker to say what's right now. So yeah, let's just get into it.
Yeah, definitely. But no, it's great to have you on. And also, Marlon, it's amazing to have you on the channel as well. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, thank you. Making my debut on the channel, so I'm more than happy. Can't wait to dissect tonight. I've been speaking about it with everybody. I just need to get it out again.
It's definitely the best way to do it. So yeah. We're going to do it tonight. And like I say, welcome to everybody that's tuning in or that's rewatching this. Make sure you get your comments in the section. I'll be flashing up comments as we go through as well. Obviously, before we get into it, this show is sponsored by The Tabletop. If you want to get some board games, get some Pokemon to fill your time rather than watching Spurs, please go check them out. But let's dive straight into this because I don't really know where to begin, to be honest with you, George. What was your kind of take on the overall game yesterday?
To be honest, it's a weird one because looking at the first half, especially Sonny, to be honest with you, I actually thought he looked a little bit more like Sonny of old because, I mean, there was a couple of times where he actually took on a fullback, whipped the ball in the box. All right, went to the keeper, but it's something we just haven't seen from him all season. And then the shooting as well. You know, that infamous sort of spot, like just on the edge of the area where he loves like whipping it into the right side of the goal. I mean, it was a brilliant save by their keeper, but he started doing that again. So I was... the first half, I was sort of thinking, okay, maybe he's like found a bit more life again, but it very, very, very quickly went down in that second half. I mean, you can just tell the players they're screwed, man. They've got no legs to stand on at the moment, literally. Like there's none left, and you could just really see that. And it just kind of went from bad to worse in the space of like 10 minutes, and we had no answer. And it is a terrible result. There's no two ways around it. 6-pointer, which is mental. If you would have told me at the start of the season that was a 6-pointer, and same as Everton last week, you would have lost your head. So, yeah, just came out just feeling really just deflated, if I'm honest with you. I remember getting on the train home and just silent, man. I couldn't believe what I just watched. So, yeah, not great, to be honest.
No, and it is obviously the 13th loss out of this season already, Marlon. I mean, what did you kind of make of the game itself?
I sat there at first and I saw how they look knackered. Like I can vouch for them. They absolutely look knackered. But it was the style of our defensive shape that really concerned me in the first half still. And I was looking at going, this is not going to end well. If Van Nistelrooy's watched the last 12 defeats, well, I say 11 because Brighton I always discount because that was completely different. If he's gone and watched it, he would do exactly the same. And if you watched the first game of the season where we played Leicester, it just reminded me of that game. Us all in the first half, second half, just couldn't take it. They took it to us, and that's how we ended up losing. So when you take the game as a whole, we're just not playing well at the moment. And it was kind of, I'm in the sense of you can see when the losses are coming within the first 10 minutes. Even when we score, you kind of go, oh, you know what, I'm still not comfortable. And that's the way things are going at the moment. And it doesn't seem to be getting any better. Even like, let's take Thursday, for instance. Thursday, you could see we played slightly better, but they were just a weaker opposition. And you knew straight away it was never going to be the same for Leicester. It was just going to be completely different. And I got to a point in the game, especially after the first half, and went, we are so lucky to be 1-0 up. And I agree with George. There were certain players that I thought are playing well, but I was like, no, they're not going to keep us up for 90 minutes. And it all depends on how Leicester came out. And Leicester came out as they did. And I was just like, here we go again, basically.
And I think that's the most annoying thing. Because like you said, although we were 1-0 up, to capitulate within the space of, 4 minutes when we come out the blocks in the second half, it just I just don't know where to turn, to be honest with you. And like you said, George, it's just so deflating. I think I've got a stat here. I think only Southampton have had a worse record than Spurs in the last 10 games. And I know we joke and we say about obviously relegation fodder at the minute, but they are relegation fodder and we're in the same sort of form as them.
Well, it's also the fact that we've gifted the other relegation fodder their first wins in some long runs without them. So it's beyond shocking. And yeah, it's tough to see where we sort of go at the moment, because the problem is, and you're right, the football that we were playing is just not great, because the Ange ball and just how he wants to play is so heavy reliant on fast, quick pressing from the front line, winning the ball back high up the pitch, choke them in, keep creating chances. And we've seen throughout the whole season, we've had an abundance of chances throughout the season. And that's the style and that's how it works for him. But when these players are literally dropping at the floor in 90 minutes versus Hoffenheim and having to play 90 minutes again 2 days later, 3 days later, we saw that against Leicester. They could not do that at all. I didn't see much pressing at all, really, apart from maybe when Sonny went striker, but then again, he was sort of doing it by himself, and he's not really who you want in those positions. I think Richie, fair to him, was doing a little bit in the first half at the beginning, but as we all know, he's not fully fit either. So this football that we're playing is so heavily reliant on how we press teams and how we win the ball back. And we weren't doing that at all. And it's not even like we were sort of setting up a bit more defensively either to sort of hit them with counters. It was just like a little bit of in between nothing. It's hard to explain. So, but it's tough, because definitely Ange needs to adjust his football. But then at the end of the day, when you haven't got the players, or the players that you do have are completely unfit, how can we play any sort of decent football? Look, if you look at Iraola's Bournemouth, for example, they're doing brilliantly well, and they do switch their style up a little bit per game. But his style of football is also heavily reliant on this chaotic, high pressing, high intensity football, which I just don't think any of our players can do right now. And I think the board are just not doing enough to give Ange the tools to make his football successful right now with all the players out. And yeah, I'm finding it really tough at the moment to see sort of where wins are going to come from if we can't even seem to do some of the basics right at the moment.
I think that's the most difficult thing, because again, it kind of leaves us at a crossroad, Marlon, because I want Ange to do well, but the players aren't necessarily being able to do that. We then obviously don't have other players to come in because of someone at the top. It's just a bit of a mess, isn't it?
Yeah, look, and I think everybody, whoever wants Ange in or out at the moment, we all want Ange to do well, because if Ange is doing well, we're all happy. The problem that you've got is that there are so many factors leading up to this point, and you're kind of like, Ange, you've kind of not helped yourself in this situation, because when we go back to the beginning of the season, we're now relying on Archie Gray, relying on Bergvall, relying on Jed Spence, relying on Reguilon. These are players that he wasn't given any minutes to. Drake Sheen as well gets thrown into that. And at some point, when it got to Thursday, Sunday, which we were struggling with even when we had our players, you kind of have to look at it and go, why wasn't he rotating them? Because when it comes to, we all knew December's fixtures were there. From September, he knew that he was going to have to use his full squad. And Van der Ven got injured last year, and we can never rely on Romero. There's going to be at some point he's going to get injured. The Vicario injury is just something that happened. You can't predict that. It was just random. But everything else we kind of knew. He's then using, you can see with Porro yesterday, Porro is on his knees because he didn't get rotated earlier in the season. He's just knackered. Going forward, he's okay, but you can see with his mind, he's making stupid decisions. He's not getting back in time. This is not what he was doing at the beginning. And then you've got Destiny Udogie as well, weren't getting rested. And now look, you can all see it. It's just half of it is down to him not being able to rotate the squad. However, I do give him, some benefit of the doubt. Injuries will happen. I know a lot of people are blaming all the hamstrings on him, all right? But we don't know. We don't know if it's him or not. We can sit there and say it is, it isn't. But when you've had the whole squad there the whole season and you're now relying on the second batch of it, you just have to look at Ange and go, you know what you've got at your disposal. Like George said, if Areola's adjusted, he makes tweaks, he does this, then the other. For what he did last week against Everton, going to a back three, and you're like, we just look clueless. Like, why are you going to it now? And then yesterday, it was kind of, you got Sarr on the pitch, and you're trying to rely on Bentancur, who'll only just come back himself, and he's probably not fully fit, trying to dictate that midfield. For me, what he should have done yesterday is gone, whoever's fit is playing, and whoever's not isn't. He shouldn't be risking Sarr and stuff like that. I know they want to put stuff out for the team, but you need to show the board that actually the squad is on his knees and this is what you're giving me. And at the moment, he's not doing it in the right way. Yes, we can be against the board, but at the same time, they're probably saying exactly what I'm just saying now. Where was all this? Where at the beginning of the season when you had the chance to rotate, and that's the problem. He's got a, and it's not like we were winning games then. We only went through that 7-game patch where we in the cups and stuff we were winning, but it was win loss, win loss, win loss, and every week we're all going on YouTube going, oh, what now? So
yeah, I know. I'm with you. It's such a difficult one because, again, as well, something that came out of the game, George, I saw Maddison post on his Instagram. I'm not doing conspiracy theory hour right now, but he did post on his Instagram that obviously the picture of him ready to play Leicester, and then he's non-existent in the kind of team sheet. I mean, for you, obviously, we know that Ange at times doesn't necessarily want to play Maddison. He brings him on. It was just strange if he was potentially fit, why he wasn't. I know it's come out that potentially he's got a calf injury or something, but what did you kind of make of him potentially not being in the squad at all?
The Maddison situation is a bit of a strange one for me. And weirdly, I was having a conversation with people the other day about it. And where I think is quite tough is I think we're in obviously such a bad situation right now in terms of the players we have available, and the ones that we did have available. You'd argue that Maddison's probably technically one of the best that we have. I think so naturally you're going to want him to play more often, especially when we're sort of struggling at the moment. I think as well, to play devil's advocate though, when you look at last season, and not even just last season, when you speak to every single Leicester fan about his seasons and how they go, all of them will tell you he has an amazing first third, he gets injured for the second third, and then he's basically poor / recovering in the final third of the season. So I do think a lot of the times it has been to do with Ange managing his minutes. And we kind of saw that with Richarlison as well yesterday, coming off pretty early. I know the fans in the stadium, especially myself, like, we're all a bit baffled. Like, we really think he's like one of our better players. But at the end of the day, when our squad is that thin, we simply can't risk a lot of these players being out for months on end. So I do think a lot of it is down to a bit of player management and injury management, but it comes to a point where we don't have a choice but to play some of these players. And I think we really could have done with Maddison in midfield, because as much as I think Bergwall's been fantastic when he stepped in, Bentancur, it's good to see him get more minutes again. Sarr's been off it the last couple of months, but when you just look at that midfield, there's no real creativity in it whatsoever. It's basically 3 8s trying to play every single position in that midfield. So, and I personally preferred Kulusevski in the middle as well. Again, he's just got absolutely no choice but to play him right wing because we've got no other options there. And it's just, it's a sad situation. I think it probably was actual injuries yesterday. It was weird before the game, but I think Maddison one was a clear injury because Paul's the ever reliable source. And if he's saying they're scanning him for calf injuries, then I trust him. So it's just a shame that when we need Maddison a lot, I think Ange is managing his minutes and stopping him from missing a whole season, so to speak.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the most annoying thing. Obviously, we can have our gripes with Ange. It's just, Marlon, at the moment, when we're talking about we're thin on the ground, it's almost like we are in January right now. And the only player I've seen come through the door is a goalie. And I still, to this day, believe if Vicario was not injured, we wouldn't have gone and got Kinski.
No, I think they said it themselves, right? I think he was supposed to be our summer signing, but they had to accelerate it because of Vicario. So we'd be stuck here with no one at the moment.
Look, it's difficult. It's so difficult because you look at how, for me, the biggest concern was the left back situation. I'm so surprised they never got somebody in, just the body. That's what Andrew wanted. Just go get him a body. You probably could go there and get a loan, because left backs, I'm going to sit there and say, don't cost much in the market. And if they really wanted to be cheeky, Cole Walker-Peters, just bring him back. If they really wanted to be cheeky, and he counts as a homegrown for us because he obviously came from our academy, which helps us out in Europe long term. However, I'm looking at the whole situation. They keep saying they're using data, they're pre-planning and whatnot, and then you get to January window, and we're 27 days in, and all we did was sign a goalkeeper. You kind of got to look at it and go, what are they doing? What are they doing for those 6 months when those injuries started happening? Are they pre-planning? Are they doing anything? But as per every January, they're not doing that. Like, because even Drakashine last year, that was Paratici. Paratici went, I know someone you can have. Here you go. So we're looking at Lange now going, what are you actually doing? The summer transfer window was probably the worst summer transfer window I can remember. And it wasn't no fault of Archie Gray or Odegaard, but they were not what Ange needed at this precise time. And that's why Odegaard obviously got injured, nothing to do with him. Bergvall came in because he came in from the January window. And it was looking at it going, Ange needs established players right now. The same players that let him down last year, they're not changing. And it's going to be the same 11. Those last 10 games were concerning. Everyone forgets those last 10 games that they were all against the top sides. They were concerning. The only two teams we beat both got relegated. And you're now expecting Ange to go out and play with these exact same players. And you've lost Højbjerg and players that were squad players. Even though they weren't good enough, they were still good enough squad players to come and help him out. And you just look at it going, what are they doing behind closed doors? Like realistically, Manchester City, no matter what's going on, they've gone and signed 3 or 4 players. They obviously think there's a ban coming, but they've gone, do you know what? We haven't spent very well. Let's go do what we need to do. Arsenal probably would have signed a striker by now. That's the only thing they really need if they didn't have other issues about getting rid of players in PSR. And I think that's why they haven't done it. And Man United as well. It seems to me that Tottenham are the only club that ever hold themselves back from this. And for me, like last January, I said the only thing we needed was a defender. We got it. Right? There weren't many players at West Ham. We got it. But this window, we needed way more. Way more. And it's just been just to watch it all and especially with the results. The Tamworth result was so bad. That is where they should have gone. We need to act. We need to act now because you shouldn't be drawing 0-0 to a non-league side, no matter how you want to put it. With that team player, they should have been good enough to at least get a goal. But here we are, 27 days in. And I think it also proves that they're not fully behind this manager. They're worried. They are completely worried. And something tells me they were worried in the summer as well. Hence the reason why they didn't really want to get Solanke for him. But if they didn't, all hell would have broken loose.
The thing I don't understand with that is like, then what's frustrating is that even if they don't actually truly believe in him, we still need the players for whatever manager is going to come in. And like, and they go on about how we want to bring that attacking identity back to Spurs. And obviously Ange has brought that to some degree, well, to a strong degree, probably too much, some might say, but it's still part of the identity. Okay, so whatever you're planning the next manager might be, then you're still in your mind thinking, okay, that's got to be some sort of attack-minded manager, surely, if you want to carry on this ethos. So surely you bring in the players that can fit that ethos as well as tactical nuances as well. Like it's negligence regardless of who they want as manager.
I think this is the issue though going forward, is that the way we've treated managers in the past 2 years, the attacking managers that want to progress and do progressive football are looking at the Spurs job going, do I really want to go there right now? Is that really the place when I can go to, let's be honest, I can go to a Bournemouth like Areola, do a good job, and probably get a Bayern Munich like Vincent Kompany got relegated, and he still managed to get a big job. So a lot of these managers are thinking, a lot of people are looking at the Premier League, and actually, as long as I'm in there doing well, I can still get a big job in Europe, or possibly a bigger job than Spurs. And we all go in and we want Thomas Frank, we want Areola, we want this guy, that guy. But most of them are probably looking at the Spurs situation going, do I really want to ruin my reputation there? Well, not ruin their reputation, because especially with Conte doing well, Nuno doing well, and Mourinho doing well, you don't really ruin your reputation at Spurs. But do I really want to go and take that stress for 18 months? Because the way Ange looks now compared to the fresh face Ange we got, Conte the same. Nuno only had 10 games and he was looking stressed. And I think a lot of managers are starting to see this. And this is why I can see why people don't want Ange to go. But at the same time, we shouldn't be 15th.
No. And I think that's the tough balance, because I'm sat here thinking, I like the way Ange plays it, but it's just not sustainable. And I can see that now. Don't get me wrong, I didn't see that at the start. But I'm also sat here thinking, but we've got a manager in that plays this style of football that Spurs have wanted for so long, and then they just hold their hands up and don't bother doing anything. I think for me, George, that's probably the biggest thing. And I think that's why a lot of people are now getting irate at the sense that, well, what's next? It's more like managers come here to die in the graveyard at Spurs more than actually be successful.
Yeah, and I mean, Poch was the most successful, and even then we still didn't actually win anything under him. So, and look where he is now, he's managing USA and struggling with some other teams. So yeah, it's a really weird situation, because for me personally, like I still believe in Ange and the football, because when I look at the start of the season, results were definitely inconsistent. But I think our actual performances were good to every game. We came out of the Leicester game thinking we should have battered them. Newcastle, all over them. We were lost by 1. There's quite a lot of those games at the start of the season where we battered teams but just didn't quite get the result. And at the end of the day, it is still a project, so to speak. We were left short in the summer, as we've seen now. And when you think back to those first 10 games, even though results were up and down, we had, I believe, the second best defence, which is mind-blowing. Some of the best attack in football. It just seemed to me personally that it was down to a lot more individual errors from certain players as to why we conceded certain goals. So I thought there were some metrics where we were improving. He's not totally blameless at all. I think there's a lot of the time, like you say, the rotation of players throughout matches, I think he massively had to improve on. And the fact that we're relying on Spence now, if anything, Spence looks better than Porro has all season. And it's taken the injuries for him to see that. And same with some others like Bergvall and Archie Gray. I have no doubt this injury crisis has actually benefited them individually because they've gotten the game time. They've developed as players quicker than they would have expected. So he's definitely not blameless at all. But I did see us actually improve in terms of the performances at the start of the season versus what we saw towards the end of last season. And I think like a project and progression in football isn't linear. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to be smashing teams every week, which is probably what we were expecting with the style of football. I think there were teething problems that needed fixing rather than massive problems. I think the problem we have now is because of the extent of the injuries and how long it's been. I think it's 3 months we've been missing half of our main players. I don't see any manager in world football being able to survive what we've had to go through in our injury crisis at the moment, no matter what style of football you play. It could be the most defensive, it could be the most attacking, somewhere in between. So that's why we're willing to give him a bit of leeway. But like you said as well, we should not be 15th. We should not be near relegation. And at the end of the day, it is a results business. So if he was to get sacked, and I can understand why people want him out for sure, we've got to be doing better than where we are. But for me, I think the context is really important. And I just wanted to see the club actually back his ideals and his plan and realise the situation. Like you said, we've been going through this for 3 months. The club knew that. Where was the preparations? Even if it was loans, like how it's almost like they've gone onto Football Manager at the start of January and ticked on who's available for loan and just seen, all right, does any of these lot fit? Colin Mawani. Oh, no, wait, he's chosen Juventus because they got Champions League football. All right, cool. That's it. We'll just leave it there then. It's not good enough from them. They need to do more.
It really isn't. And I think, again, it goes back to that point that we've been making. Like in the summer, yes, I was amazed that we shipped all those players out. But then, Marlon, like you said, it's now we've shot ourselves in the foot because, again, even when the January transfer window opened, got Kinski in, sweet, shut everyone up. Like, let's not do anything for the rest of the month.
And that's the worst thing is like he came into that Liverpool game and we were like, yes, this is the keeper we want. But actually, the last 2 games, the North London derby and even yesterday, I started to see faults in him already. And he's only been here a month. And I was sitting there at the beginning going, you know what? With his feet, he's really good. And I think he's going to take Vicario's spot. And I thought, actually, he makes the defence more calm. And then all of a sudden, the North London derby game kicked in and the defence have gone erratic again. Ben Davies is back and we're still looking as bad. And that's the worst situation. Like we should not, in any shape or form, be losing to Leicester at home. That team yesterday, he put out, they should be winning that game, even with a half-fit side. And the only thing I'd say with the whole, yes, I get we've got all those injuries, and yes, some managers won't cope, but the way he's coping with it doesn't bode well with me. And I think when we get to 13, 14 losses, I'm going, come on. Some, like, even Arteta changed his style a little bit at the beginning of his reign when they were getting smashed each week. Even he went, I can't do this every week.
That's definitely fair. I think the problem is for me as well, I saw him go ultra defensive against, who was it the other week? He went ultra defensive and we still got battered and still lost. So it didn't work. And maybe that's just down to maybe not being good enough tactically. I don't know. Maybe.
So when I look at it, like I take the Everton game where he changed his tactics. Now that reminded me a lot of Newcastle and the whole Stellini when they tried to went from 3 at the back to things. So they obviously hadn't worked on it. For me, it's like you're playing Everton. The thing is about him trying to be defensive. When we are defensive, I don't think it's actually down to us. I think it's down to how the other team are. Because let's take Liverpool. Because Liverpool put us straight back, it meant that Porro and I can't remember who was playing left back. Spence, wasn't it, in the cup? They couldn't push us high because Liverpool had pushed us back, which fell into our favour because of the way that they played, which meant that Porro wasn't getting caught out of position. where in the first game, Liverpool allowed them to come on us. So it meant that every time we could catch them. And this time, I don't know why they tried to change it, but that's why we ended up getting the 1-0 win. It's going to be quite interesting when we go to Anfield. Now, whenever he does try and do defensive, it's because the other team are just better than us, more than anything else. And that's the worrying thing about this whole situation is when we are playing like against Arsenal, again, he tried to attack, but again, we're getting caught out because our fullbacks are way too high. Now, for me, I would sit there and go, you know what? We're getting caught out too many times. We haven't got our central pairing. Just come back a little bit. Let the forwards deal with it. I know they're not good enough. Our front three is terrible. But at the end of the day, that back four needs to be a unit, and they're just not. And that's the biggest problem we have so far is that they're not being a unit, and we get to certain games where we're way too open, we're giving way too many chances, and this is why we're just getting picked off. And like you said, when we're winning at being seen 4-1s, 3-1s, we're getting big results. But when we were losing and we couldn't really get going, we were losing 1-0 here and there. So that's why it looks so good. But actually, when you look at those games on paper, all the games that we lost, apart from Brighton, I'll always put Brighton out of it because it was, but all the rest of them, we were exactly the same. We were just losing, like Crystal Palace, Ipswich. You know, they were exactly the same format. A ultra defensive team. We couldn't break them down, and they catch us with 2 or 3. And Leicester did the same. Like took 4 minutes to beat us. Arsenal last week took 5-10 minutes to beat us because they went and scored 2 goals. Game done. And that's what seems to be the reoccurring themes. Teams are not looking at it going, just give them the ball. We'll break on them. They'll lose it in some sort of area in that midfield. Because Porro and Spence or your Doggy or Regular are not in their space, we can catch them on the wings. Same thing happened against Forest. And they know full well we can't break them down because we have Timo Werner, Brennan Johnson, Solanke playing up front by himself half the time. And Son, well, we haven't seen Son for the last month, apart from Sunday, which I thought he played again. I did think he played well, but just not good enough. And this is where we're at with the whole situation.
Yeah, to be honest, you spoke a lot of facts there, 100%. But I think for me as well, I think like things get fixed sort of a step at a time. And I look at other examples of different teams, like Klopp's early years at Liverpool. Yeah. They would win by winning games 5-4. Similar to how we probably thought our season would go at the start of the season. If we're going to win by scoring more than the opposition. And I think naturally over time, you sort of fix that with either more time on the training pitch or
but with Klopp,
recruitment.
Just to add on to that, Klopp, and I do agree with you to a certain extent, but if you listen to Liverpool fans in that first year, they wanted him out.
Yeah.
But the only reason why and this is what everyone always forgets with Klopp, the only reason why Klopp was getting away with it, he got to 2 finals in his first year.
Yeah.
And
that's still in 3 other cup competitions this year.
And that seriously could be the reason why. But the problem with Klopp, Klopp's wasn't 15th and losing games like willy-nilly, and that's the big difference right now. Yes, Klopp found out the hard way. Even Pep in his first season found out the hard way, and that's why he went and spent how much he did on the defense. And actually,
the same's happened with Arteta.
Yeah, the same. Yeah, and everyone uses Liverpool and Arsenal as the barometer because obviously they've gone through the same rebuilding process. Mm-hmm. There's a slight difference with those two. Look how much money they had to go and spend to get to where they got to. This is where I worry for Ange, and this is why I can't get fully behind him because the way our board acts, they won't fully ever get behind him. Now, if I said to you, next season, there's going to be injuries again because of the way the last 2 seasons have gone, and Ange hasn't coped with it 2 seasons in a row, would you trust Ange to get results next year? Probably not. And we'll be here talking about the injuries once again because he'll go through a bad period and we'll end up going down the table.
But that's also when I think the issues just stem straight to the top again, because then to me it doesn't matter whether it's Ange or whoever else next year. If they're still not willing to get certain players to compete at a certain level, then it doesn't matter what style of football you play. It doesn't matter how tactically apt or inept you are as a manager. But you'll then have to just face the facts that we're not going to be that team then.
And this is the thing, and this is the question, and this is the thing I've always been saying to people. It's not about who the fans want as the next manager. It's about whoever can work with this board. And you have to look at the managers that have been quite successful with this board. When you look at it, Martin Yeo was probably loved by all of us and he took us to the next level, if we're being completely honest, because we weren't in European football back then when he first took over, and he took us and got us there. Then you have to look at Harry Redknapp and go, Harry Redknapp got us playing some beautiful football. It was exciting. Yeah, we used to lose games here and there. We'll be like, what are you doing? And semi-finals. But he got us. And then Pochettino, who was able to work with what they were giving him. at that time. It was only when he wanted to rebuild that the club went, oh no, we want to give you the same players we gave you 5 years ago. And Poch is like, no, I'm ambitious now. I want to win something with you guys. So when they were offering him players like Tielemans at the time and players like that, he was going, I need better than that because I want to be competing in the Champions League year in, year out. So what you're going to have to do now, the next manager has to suit the board, not us. It can't be what we want because unfortunately, if they're going to act in a certain way, then it has to fit their model, not because he's gone for Ange. And now if I sat there and said to any Celtic fan, what you're seeing at Tottenham, is it any different to Celtic? They'd be like, no. Because it was never, but he had the best team in Scotland. So it was always going to work for him there. But as soon as you come to but when it came to Champions League games, you saw it with Celtic. They played well for 60 minutes and then they just get picked off because there was better quality. And that's why he had such a bad European record. And now he's come with us. The Premier League's a different animal and a different beast. And what you've got here is, and as you can see by the managers, we've got a good set of managers in this league that tactically will look at your style and go, okay, how can I counteract that? And that's why the Premier League is probably one of the most watched, because you will have a Leicester going to Tottenham, who are meant to be this big club, and put a result in, where in other leagues you don't really get, you get the odd result here and there, but not as much as it is in the Premier League.
For me personally, I think we need to, I don't quite like the mentality of getting a manager that suits the board rather than the other way around. Because I mean, technically, in theory, Ange was that, right? He came in with the idea of he signs a lot of youngsters. He signs in unknown markets, so therefore relatively cheap. So really and truly, that did sort of fit the board. I think the problem is the Premier League has gotten to such a high level now across the board that Nottingham Forest offer more wages than we do for their players. And that is, at the end of the day, the be-all and end-all to getting high-quality players, unfortunately, is are you willing to offer them the right amount of packaging? Because, we've spent a lot of money the last few years, no doubt. We've competed with the best in terms of the amount we spend on the transfer fees, but that's from club to club. You've then also got to convince the player that you're the right club to come to. That's what City had to do when they first got the money in. Yeah. They had to overspend to convince people this is the right place to come. And then over time, we will become successful for that. And unfortunately, they're doing some incredible comparisons of like the median earner at each of the top clubs. And I think what Arsenal's were pretty, like Marino's their middle ground player and he's a new player and he's on 150k a week. Whereas our middle grounds are on 75, literally half of what they're earning. We're not going to, it doesn't matter what position you're in, because if you're not willing to offer the wages that the market is currently at, we're never going to get better players to compete at the level that the Premier League is. It doesn't matter what manager that is or the style that is. You can go into lower markets and try and pick up younger players or unknown players, but that's going to take a lot more time, which unfortunately us as a Spurs fan base, we're not willing to give that manager enough time.
Yeah, but this is why everyone's like, I'm going to use Areola as the prime example. This is why everyone's giving him the side eye at the moment, because you look at what he's working with and you're going, hold on, but if he can, look, at the end of the day, this is the excuse that he hasn't played three games a week, right? So we don't know how he's going to cope with that with a Bournemouth side.
And it's also the expectations of Bournemouth as well.
Exactly. So you kind of look at it going, but what he's doing tactically in the big games, you can see that he's not playing, like when he played us, Manchester City, Arsenal at home, he didn't play that way against Nottingham Forest, because Forest are a complete different animal. Forest like to play on the break. So, he's adjusted his tactics the way he adjusted his tactics for Newcastle last week, which everybody up until that, everyone's been struggling with Newcastle up until that point. So that's what I think the biggest problem is here, is that Ange only has one way of playing. And I agree with you. You would have thought he would have been the best person. But actually, when you look at him defensively and what he's going to need, he was never the right fit for Tottenham. And if anyone had done their research on the whole process properly, would have gone, because I remember when he first came in, I called him, it's going to be very Ozzy Ardiles. And that's going back. And like, I remember Ozzy Ardiles days, and it was quite kind of like 4-3s here and there, win, lose. And we just weren't very good defensively. We had the front five who were brilliant, Klinsmann, Dimitrescu and all them. But defensively, we were out of shape. And again, we got done then. And last season, I looked at him, I was like, you know what? He's got us fifth. He's done well, and without Harry Kane. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But those that from January to May really did concern me. And then it got to the summer transfer window. I was like, okay, here we go. And then it got to that point of win, loss. And I was willing to give him all the cups. I was willing, because I didn't mind the win, loss. I was willing to give it to him.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the Arsenal game last week where I went, this is not working. And we're slowly as we're slowly getting down the table. And that was before the Everton and Leicester game. And now I just can't. Would you trust Ange to be in a relegation battle if we keep going down there? And at this present moment, I don't trust him. I think we need something else to get us out of it. And even with the players coming back, we said this last year, and we still lost all those last 10 games. So it's concerning for me is the mentality breaking. He looks
I think that first week of Feb is his week anyway.
Yeah,
that is
exactly
the make or break. If we get to a final, he will get the chance to do it. If
he gets to the final, he has to take it. My
only problem is that, and it's probably mainly down to the fact that there's no other options for me personally, because I look at the situation and we're in such a catch-22 situation, because you're like, something will have to change if we're knocked out of the cups. He probably will get sacked. But then I really don't want Ryan Mason until the end of the season, because he's been a coach under him anyway, and it's like he's done it 3 times now. So it will be his 3rd time, and it's just. And look, Iraola's not going to leave Bournemouth mid-season. Thomas Frank didn't want to go Man United with all the fucking funds that they have to stay at Brentford. So then you look at the options. What is there? And for me, I'd rather just stick with a manager than wait until the summer than just go to Ryan Mason.
So the only 2 managers that I'd sit there and go would probably fit our style and would they come in anyway, but I don't know if it would work out, would be Xavi or Lowe, right? Because the way they want to play. Apart from that, but we've been linked with the guy from the ex-Dortmund manager and Allegri.
Very defensive football though.
And I'm just like, but you told us when you signed Ange that you're not going to go back down that route. And Allegri, don't get me wrong, will be like quite successful. Well, probably could do quite a good job. But you told me you're not going down that route no more.
Yeah.
You told me Conte was out, because I was a fan of Conte, but you said as a club we're moving forward and look at the players you brought in. So if Allegri comes in, you've completely just lied to me for the last 18 months. Let me get behind Ange. Go, I'm behind this attacking football to go back to where we started. This was the whole point with the whole
it would just be panic mode again.
Panic mode, and we can't go through panic mode. But unfortunately, I'm at this precise moment. I got a feeling the reason why Ange is still here is because everybody said no
options. Yeah,
there was no options.
But definitely because he's still in the cups as we speak, and I think that is only his saving grace. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I hate the idea of getting a manager in purely because it fights the board, because George, I just rinse and repeat every single week. And I know there's lots of people in there, so I want to say thank you to everybody tuning in. Obviously, there's people in with their comments about Daniel Levy. There's people in here about Ange and the stylist player. Like Marlon said, is he going to be the one, if it does get that bad, to keep us up? So I do appreciate you all. But George, it kind of, like you said, it's a crossroads. Are they not backing Ange because they're getting rid of him in a couple of weeks? Are they never going to back a manager anyway because it's too far gone down that pipeline now? I really don't know anymore. And I think that's why I'm just so done and disconnected with the whole situation.
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, everything's just been a business decision. It seems to be like, I don't know if you guys feel the same. It seems to be like we tend to get like one thing right, and then they just go and do something else that changes it completely. It was, all right, we've turned White Hart Lane into a fortress. Let's knock it down and move to Wembley for 2 years and build a new stadium. We get this new stadium that's supposed to bring us this great revenue, which it has, but that was supposed to go into the first team. It didn't at the beginning. Okay, we actually started to spend a fair bit of money the last 4 years or so. Okay, we're getting there. But now they want to reduce the wage bill, because reducing the wage bill makes the club more valuable to them when they're trying to get external investment, which it's been said all season they want external investment to be able to compete. And unfortunately, by doing that, by lowering the wage bill, it means that the value of the shares that the club have and what it's worth is better for Enoch and Levy and co. So it's like they don't want to sign players on a lot of wages because they can't then get more money per share for future investment. So it's just one thing after the other that seems to be like there's just always a big stumbling block in the way to making it a successful team on the pitch. So I think we're just stuck in limbo at the moment. And I don't think we know what's going to happen until literally next week when the cup games happen.
And I think that's the biggest annoying thing, because yes, I know football's a business, but there comes a point, Marlon, where it's like, why do I even bother, in a sense? Because we put a lot of time, and I know lots of people have said, if you don't go to the game, don't sell your ticket. But then it's us fans that are losing out on that money, and it comes back to us that we always lose. So it's probably too much of a question to kind of answer, but where do we kind of go from here? Because I know that we've done protests in the past. I know people are very vocal about it, but I just don't know how we can change the situation, if that makes sense.
Look, there needs to be like Sunday was massive, like, because obviously you've got people in the stadium and everyone's now talking about it. Every mainstream media was talking about it. Even the mainstream media are now pushing on Tottenham and Daniel Levy going, because they've never done this before. Because I always believe that Daniel Levy has a hand in what the media can do and say, and the club will contact you. Jamie O'Hara put it out there years ago when he got contacted by the club to say, what are you doing? Right? So for me, as a fan base, look, and I said this last night, I'm relying on season ticket holders. They are the bread and butter of this club right now, and they're the ones who can make massive change. But it's down to them what they want to do and come together. Now, there are options, which I don't really want to put on here just in case they do go ahead with it, and then obviously Spurs try and stop it. But there are options that they can do inside the stadium at certain points of the game or whatever. So you still go and support the team. And you still get to go and, do what you need to do, but actually still, as they did yesterday, have the banners and whatnot and still have Levy out. But the problem you've got is the whole fan base needs to be together on this. And right now, I'm not sure whether they all are. And that's the biggest problem we have right now, because it's all right in the YouTube world and the social media, but not half of us, most of us are not at the stadium on a match day. You can't then expect, and this is going to sound really odd, we can't expect half of us who are not going to the stadium to go, to go turn up for a protest that's organised outside where they're not seeing it. So something needs to happen, hit them financially or hit them PR-wise. And at the moment, the PR machine is just going because everyone this week is just talking about whose fault is it? Is it Ange? Is it Spurs? Is it this? So it's not doing them the world of good, and they don't know how to answer it at the moment. Now, they can't sack him at this present moment either while there's negative PRs on him, because it's just going to look even worse, because like, right, who are you going to bring in? Because how many managers... It
would just look like another failure to like...
Another failure. And this is the problem. So at the moment, we've gotten where we want them. It's how we take the next step as... Like, we haven't done this in Sugar, right? We haven't, and we got Sugar out eventually. Look, it's not going to be a case of they're going to sell the club tomorrow. If we got relegated, just saying, again, they're not going to sell the club, devalues it. They're going to want to, unfortunately, we're then stuck with them until we come back up. So we need to stay in the Premier League, people, just to even have a chance to get rid of them. But at this present moment, it's difficult to know what the next step is. But as long as everyone can get on, it's not fighting each other, not thinking, I want to be the head of. Look, there's change for Tottenham. Let's see what the next step is they have. Whether people agree with it or not, let's just try and get down that point. So because I think all of us want some sort of change, whether it's Levy gone or whether it's they need to start putting the first team first and we start seeing change from them. Then we're all going to be happy and fighting again which manager we want, not instead. But I think right now, 90% of the fan base can see what the issue is, but all of us sitting there going, how can we tackle this? Because this investment company is a massive machine right now, and they've had us for 24 years. And now, they're the longest serving. How are we going to get them either out or to change? And that's the big question. Even I don't have those answers.
I think the problem is the fan base that we see online on Twitter and YouTube and whatever is so different to season ticket holders on the ground, because I was there yesterday, and the chants were as loud as they've ever been, and I was like quite impressed, to be honest. But there were still so many people around me, then having a go at those fans, saying, "No, look what they've done. Why you did? That's not gonna blah 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 blah." So I think what we see online versus what's like the reality in terms of fans in the ground is it's two different things.
It's two different things, yeah.
And I think the mainstream media definitely will help that aspect, because again, those fans that probably aren't anti the board or whatever, like they probably don't spend their lives on social media like we do, and they probably don't see these campaigns because, like you said, that's not where they get their information. So maybe this mainstream media like PR campaign or so on and so forth might change things eventually. But yeah, I think unfortunately what we see online versus in real life is completely different.
And this is the thing. Like, I know people sit there and have a go at, you know, us YouTubers for what we do, and then what people are saying on X and whatnot. But at the end of the day, again, most of us are not there at the games like you guys are and stuff like that. And I go time and time again. But at the end of the day, it's how we feed the information to the season ticket holders. And how many of them are really that bothered? Because as you said, I know a lot of them will go, well, look where we are, we're in a big stadium and things like that. But as I said yesterday, is in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, or even 40, who remembers who built the stadium? No one's going to remember that information. If I said to anybody, who was the chairman when White Hart Lane was built? Or who was the owner? No one would be like, I don't know. So why do we, like, that's what their legacy is. That's all their legacy is going to be, is the stadium and the training ground. And the training ground will eventually get replaced in about how many years' time as well. So it's going to be the stadium. And that's all they're going to be remembered for. That's, for me, that's not good enough. And that says everything about this football club right now and where we're at. That the fact is, and we're not expecting to win trophies every year. That's not, you know, we're Tottenham Hotspur. We're not expecting to win league titles. But when you're paying, and this will always come, when you're paying the highest paid ticket prices now, people expect something better. And that's the problem that they have. If they went there, I know they're not going to, if they went there with White Hart Lane ticket prices, season tickets and stuff, and just said, here's a bigger stadium for you, we'll cut the cost here and there, people won't be complaining much. It would be, oh, look where we are, we're still paying. But to be the highest paid, and that's what you're serving up. This is why Tottenham and Arsenal are both in the same boat in that sense, because you're giving us London waiting prices basically and expecting to give us so little back. And that's going to be the issue going forward. And like you said, the wages is always going to be a problem, because when you pay small wages, even though it might be a high transfer fee, but small wages, this is where you get the inconsistency with players. Because if you notice, the players that demand higher wages always tend to be more consistent in their gameplay and can demand that, where we're like, let's go get Dominic Solanke. No fault of his own, he's been good, but he's up, down, up, down, up, down for Bournemouth. He had a good season like the second half of last year, but he wasn't consistent over the years before that. And this is why you end up in the situation you end up in.
No, I think you both put it nail on the head. I think that's where we're at. And like you said, change for Spurs, make sure you watch out for them, because I think that is the route we need to go down to. We need to hit them hard, PR-wise, financially, because that's the only time they're going to take note. So again, turning the first page is trying to get everybody united, I think, before we can go forward. But it's definitely something is changing in the motions of it, which is obviously good to see. And again, thank you to everybody that's obviously putting their comments in as well. I just don't want to hide Marlon's face when he's in full flow of talking. So I do apologise, but thank you very much. But before we go, obviously, I want to try and be a little bit positive and try and look ahead to obviously Thursday and the weekend. So, George, obviously, try and be positive, but how do you feel the next two games are kind of going to go?
I mean, I feel a lot more positive for Thursday than I do Sunday. I can tell you that for a fact. But I think, yeah, I mean, look, Brentford's at the weekend, away especially, they're pretty good at home. They concede goals, but their record is very good at home versus away. So that's I'm not expecting anything from that game, and especially because it's going to be after a Thursday match. But look, Elfsborg on Thursday, it's at home. They're one of the lower/worst teams in the Europa League. I think it's going to be a very similar situation to the Hoffenheim. We naturally won't blow them away because it's just the way the squad's been the last few weeks. There's not enough players there, and I don't quite think like your Romeros and Van der Vens are going to be back ready to play those games. They might have a few minutes on Sunday in preparation for Liverpool, which would at least be nice to see their faces. But I think Thursday is going to be very similar to last week. I think we'll get a win. It'll be at home. It won't be this super convincing 3-4-0, but we'll get it done. We'll secure top 8. Fine. That's one good competition done. The problem is, like, from yesterday to Thursday, you basically get that one extra day rest. And I think that's made a massive, massive difference for us. Because if you look throughout the whole season, really, we tend to do quite well in the midweek game, and then we suffer on the Sunday. So I'm not expecting anything good at all against Brentford. I'm expecting a win on Thursday, and then it's just up to them above to what happens on next week against Liverpool, and we just pray we can somehow get our way through and get to a final. But yeah, that's my thoughts.
I think you're kind of spot on. I think I'm kind of in the same boat. How about you, Marlon?
Yeah, no, do you know what? Look, the Europa League I think, it's going to be probably our best avenue as well, getting a trophy this year. I think Villa for me will depend on whether they get knocked out. Well, when I say knocked out, whether they need to lose the next game, I believe, not to get an automatic spot, which means after our cup game, they'll have to play an extra set of games, which means the Champions League. So they'll end up resting players for the FA Cup, or they'll end up getting a week. They'll end up getting a full week, so they'll end up putting out their first team, and we're kind of lacking at the moment. The only good thing is that Van de Ven and Romero seem like they're on their way back. I've got a strange feeling that we might see Romero next week against Brentford. Hopefully, and he's fully fit. But for me, right now, if we need to somehow get through against Liverpool, I don't care how we do it. If we have to put 10 men behind the ball, let's just do it. I don't care. I want a Conte style Ryan Mason in the final against Man City defensive performance, and just kind of go to Liverpool fans. See, we can do it. But look, the problem I've got is if we get to the final, we're going to have Newcastle or Arsenal. And the way they've both played against us this season, am I confident? Probably not. But the Europa League, Lazio are probably the only team in that competition that we should be kind of scared of, even with our first team. This is like if we actually went and played our first team. The one team we should be scared of. Everyone else, if we went and said, you know what, we can get through the league and pick up results, Europa League could be the way going forward. And I think Ange's style works there just because teams are totally different and the way the European system works. And that's where I think we can get the most joy.
No, good shout. And I like to say it all hangs on that bloody Liverpool game. So that might be Judgment Day. And then Ryan Mason to the end of the season, probably. But yeah, I'm not. It's really annoying because I know a couple of seasons ago with Conte Ball and Jose Ball, I was literally having therapy sessions every Monday. And I feel like we've gone back to that situation this season. And it's just annoying. And it's just a ball ache because, again, we thought that this would have been something different, and sadly we're let down once again. I mean, it's a cluster of everything, to be fair, but hey ho, every day is a fun day being a Spurs fan. But it's been amazing tonight to kind of sit down, break it down a little bit so I feel less depressed. So we'll go around the room, say our goodbyes and stay where we can find each other. So George, thank you again for coming on the show. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
No, absolute pleasure and chatting to you guys, and therapy sessions are very much needed. There's something about like saying all this out loud rather than just to myself in the house. It's much nicer. So thank you for having me on. As you can see on the app there, it's just at George Achille pretty much on every single platform. We've been a bit quiet on YouTube recently. Work was just hectic towards the end of 2024, but we're going to start getting some more content out soon. But yeah, we'll keep an Instagram going strong and just pray that Spurs go back on the up. That's all we can do right now. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Fingers crossed. No, thank you, George. And Marlon, it's been amazing to have you on the show tonight. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Where can everybody find you?
Look, at Spurs Kings TV, Instagram, X, and on YouTube. It's me and a guy called Ash. We kind of do our thing. We just go through tactics and things like that. We try and stay away from the whole politics side of things, but it's our Premier League show on a Wednesday, which causes the most. If you want to laugh and you're feeling depressed on a Wednesday at 10 o'clock, even I'm not allowed to be on it. I'm not even been, it's my own channel. I'm not even been invited. It's probably one of the funniest shows you will ever see. And we have different fans from different channels, and it just completely, after 10 minutes, it goes off, and Spurs somehow will always get the kick in. But we defend ourselves. But yeah, Spurs Kings TV. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Thanks to Hollie and George as well. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Been a good one. And again, thank you to everybody as well that's been tuning in, that's going to go rewatch this or listen to it. A few new faces, so if you are new, I do really appreciate a subscribe. That would be ace. But yeah, hopefully next Monday we may have a win to dissect, because Jesus Christ, I don't know what we're going to do if we have another loss to talk about. But hey ho, thanks again everyone, and until next time, come on you Spurs.